Welcome back to a Book a Day podcast. Once again, I've got another wonderful book with me. And this one, you are especially going to love it if you are an aspiring writer or an artist. The book is called Letters to a Young Poet, written by author and poet Rainer Maria Rilke. And as the title suggests, it's a series of letters that he wrote to a young poet. And there are two things that you'll find in each one of these letters. One is the technical side of poetry writing and how you can make it better, improve on it. And the other side is slightly more generic advice in terms of how to find your identity, how to do your work with greater passion and commitment. So I think it's the second part, it's the letter that's of interest for a lot of readers. But as I said, if you are somebody who wants to write who already writes, this has got a lot of value for you. So what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to read a couple of letters for you, and I hope you will learn plenty of things from this. Because honestly, there's so much on offer in each one of these letters. So let me start with the first letter, and you can identify from the contents of this letter that he's replying to the young poet and talking about his writings and giving him feedback. You'll get the context from the letter. So let me read this first letter without any delay. Here we go. My dear sir, your letter has reached me just a few days ago. I want to thank you for the deep and loving trust it revealed. I can do no more. I cannot comment on the style of your verses. Critical intent is too far removed from my nature. There is nothing that manages to influence a work of art less than critical words. They always result in more or less unfortunate misunderstandings. Things are not as easily understood nor as expressible as people usually would like us to believe. Most happenings are beyond expression. They exist where a word has never intruded. Even more inexpressible are works of art. Mysterious entities they are, whose lives, compared to our fleeting ones, endure. Having said these things at the outset, I now dare tell you only this, that your verses do not as yet have an individual style. Yet they possess a quiet and hidden inclination to reveal something personal. I felt that very thing most notably in the last poem, My Soul. There something of your inner self wants to rise to expression. And in the beautiful poem to Leopardi, something akin to greatness and bordering on uniqueness is sprouting out towards fulfillment. However, the poems cannot yet stand on their own merit, are not yet independent. Not even the last one to Leopardi, not yet. In your kind letter accompanying them, you do not fail to admit to and to analyze some shortcomings, which I could sense while reading your verses, but could not directly put into words. You ask whether your poems are good. You send them to publishers. You compare them with other poems. You're disturbed when certain publishers reject your attempts. Well, now, since you have given me permission to advise you, I suggest you give all that up. You are looking outward, and above all else, that you must not do now. No one can advise and help you. No one. There is only one way. Go within. Search for the cause. Find the impetus that bids you right. Put it to this test. Does it stretch out its roots in the deepest place of your heart? Can you avow that you would die if you were forbidden to write? Above all, in the most silent hour of your night, ask yourself this: must I write? Dig deep into yourself for a true answer. And if it should ring its assent, if you can confidently meet this serious question with a simple "I must," then build your life upon it. It has become your necessity. Your life, in even the most mundane and least significant hour, must become a sign, a testimony to this urge. Then draw near to nature. Pretend you are the very first man, and then write what you see and experience, what you love and lose. Do not write love poems, at least at first. They present the greatest challenge. It requires great, fully ripened power to produce something personal, something unique, when there are so many good and sometimes even brilliant renditions in great numbers. Beware of general themes. Cling to those that your everyday life offers you. Write about your sorrows, your wishes, your passing thoughts, your belief in anything beautiful. Describe all that with fervent, quiet, and humble sincerity. In order to express yourself, use things in your surroundings, the scenes of your dreams, and the subjects of your memory. If your everyday life appears to be unworthy subject matter, do not complain to life. Complain to yourself. Lament that you are not poet enough to call up its wealth. For the creative artist, there is no poverty. Nothing is insignificant or unimportant. Even if you were in a prison whose walls would shut out from your senses the sounds of the outer world, would you not then still have your childhood, this precious wealth, this treasure house of memories? Direct your attention to that. Attempt to resurrect these sunken sensations of distant past. You will gain assuredness. Your aloneness will expand and will become your home, greeting you like the quiet dawn. Outer tumult will pass it by from afar. If, as a result of this turning inward, of this sinking into your own world, poetry should emerge, you will not think to ask someone whether it is good poetry, and you will not try to interest publishers of magazines in these works, for you will hear in them your own voice. You will see in them a piece of your life, a natural possession of yours. A piece of art is good if it is born of necessity. This, its source, is its criteria. There is no other. Therefore, my friend, I know of no other advice than this. Go within and scale the depths of your being, from which your very life springs forth. At its source, you will find the answer to the question whether you must write. Accept it, however it sounds to you, without analyzing. Perhaps it will become apparent to you that you are indeed called to be a writer. Then accept that fate, bear its burden and its grandeur, without asking for the reward, which might possibly come from without. For the creative artist must be a world of his own and must find everything within himself and in nature to which he has betrothed himself. It is possible that even after your descent into your inner self and into your secret place of solitude, you must find that you must give up becoming a poet. As I have said, to feel that one could live without writing is enough indication that, in fact, one should not. Even then, this process of turning inward, upon which I beg you to embark, will not have been in vain. Your life will no doubt from then on find its own paths, that they will be good ones and rich and expansive, that I can wish for you more than I can say. What else shall I tell you? It seems to me everything has been said, just the right emphasis. I wanted only to advise you to progress quietly and seriously in your involvement. You could greatly interfere with that process if you look outward and expect to obtain answers from the outside. Answers which only your innermost feeling in your quietest hour can perhaps give you. I was very happy to find in your writing the name of Professor Horaik. I harbor the highest regard for this kindest of scholars and owe him lasting gratitude. Would you please pass my sentiments on to him? It is very kind of him to think of me still, and I appreciate it. I am returning the verses which you entrusted me. I thank you again for your unconditional and sincere trust. I am overwhelmed with it, and therefore have tried to the best of my ability to make myself a little more worthy than I, as a stranger to you, really am. With my sincerest interest and devotion, yours, Rainer Maria Rilke. So that's the first letter, and as I said, it gives you a very specific advice on finding your voice, your style as a writer. But it also tells you something deeper, how you need to find your own identity. Rather than looking outwards, you need to look inwards. And how you need to be with the nature, be on your own, how solitude can help you. And a similar idea and theme is reflected in another one of his letters, which is letter number 6. And I'm going to read that for you here. So let me read it now. My dear Mr. Kappus, you should not be without a greeting from me at Christmas time, when in the midst of the festivities, your feeling of aloneness is apt to weigh more heavily upon you. Whenever you notice that it looms large, then be glad about it. For what would aloneness be, you ask yourself, if it did not possess greatness? There exists only one aloneness, and it is great, and it is not easy to bear. To nearly everyone come those hours that we would gladly exchange for any cheap or even the most banal camaraderie, for even the slightest inclination to choose the second best or the most unworthy thing. But perhaps it is exactly in those hours when aloneness can flourish. Its growth is painful as the growing up of a young boy and sad as the emergence of springtime. But that should not confuse you. What you really need is simply this: aloneness, great inner solitude. To go within and for hours not to meet anyone, that is what one needs to attain. To be lonely as one was lonely as a child, while adults were moving about, entangled with things that seemed big and important. because the grown ups looked so busy and because one could not understand any of their doings. That must be the goal. And when you realize one day that their activities are superficial, that their careers are paralyzed and no longer linked with life, then why not look at the world as a child would see it, out of the depths of your own world, out of the breadth of your own aloneness, which is itself work and rank and career. Why should anyone wish to exchange a child's wise incomprehension for resistance and disdain, since the incomprehension is aloneness, and resistance and disdain are an involvement in the things you seek to escape from? Think, dear friend, reflect on the world that you carry within yourself, and name this thinking what you wish. It might be recollections of your childhood or yearning for your own future. Just be sure that you observe carefully what wells up within you and place that above everything that you notice around you. Your innermost happening is worth all your love. You must somehow work on that. Do not expend too much courage or time to clarify your position to others. I know your career is difficult, and I anticipated your complaint and knew it would come. Now that it has come, I cannot reassure you. I can only advise you to think seriously about this. Are not all careers the same, filled with demands and people filled with animosity towards the individual, at the same time absorbing the hatred of those who have silently and sullenly adapted to dull duty? The situation that you are now obliged to tolerate is not burdened any heavier with conventions, prejudices, and errors than any other situation. If there are some who outwardly give the impression of granting more freedom, know that there really exists none that is related to the important things that make up real life. The individual person who senses his aloneness, and only he, is like a thing subject to the deep laws, the cosmic laws. If a person goes out into the dawn or gazes out into the evening filled with happenings, if he senses what happens there, then all situations fall away from him as from someone dead, even though he stands in the midst of life. You, as an officer in the military, need to experience this feeling. You must realize that you would have felt the same way in any existing career now. Yes, aside from that, independent of career, if you had sought connections in society, you would not have been spared this feeling of constraint. It is the same everywhere, but that is not a reason for fear or sadness. If there seems to be no communication between you and the people around you, try to draw close to those things that will not ever leave you. The nights are still there, and the winds that roam through the trees and over many lands. Amidst things and amidst animals are happenings in which you can participate. The children too are still the same as you were as a child, sad and happy in the same way. And if you think about your childhood, then you can again live among them, the lonely children, where the adults count for nothing and their dignity has no worth. And if it is distressing and agonizing for you to think of your childhood and of the simplicity and silence so close akin to it, because you no longer believe in God who is constantly appearing there, then ask yourself whether you have really lost God. Is it not rather true that you have not yet possessed him? For when could that have been? Do you think a child can hold him? Him whom men can bear only with great effort and whose weight crushes the aged ones? Do you think that the one possessing him could lose him like a little stone? Or do you not rather agree that he who might have him could be lost by him? However, if you conclude that he did not exist in your childhood and not before that, if you surmise that Christ was deluded by his yearning and that Muhammad was betrayed by his pride, and if you, with great dismay, feel that he does not exist, even during this hour, while we are speaking of him, what right have you then to miss him, like someone out of the past, him who never existed, and to seek him as though he were lost? Why don't you think of him as the coming one, who has been at hand since eternity, the future one, the final fruit of a tree, with us as its leaves? What is keeping you from hurling his birth into evolving times and from living your life as though it were one painful, beautiful day in the history of a great pregnancy? Don't you see that everything that happens becomes a beginning again and again? Could it not be his beginning, since a beginning in itself is always so beautiful? If, however, he is the most perfect one, would not what is less than perfect have to precede him, so that he can choose himself over great abundance? Would not he have to be the last one in order to envelop everything within himself? And what sense would our existence make if the one we longed for had already had his existence in the past? By extracting the most possible sweetness out of everything, just as the bees gather honey, we thus build him. With any significant thing, even with the very smallest thing, if only it is done out of love, we begin with work, with a time of rest following, with keeping silent, or with a small lonely joy, with everything that we do alone, without participant or supporters. We begin him, the one whom we shall not experience in this lifetime, even as our ancestors could not experience us. Yet they who belong to the distant past are in us, serving us impetus, or as a burden to our fate, as blood that can be heard rushing, as a gesture rising out of the depths of time. Is there anything now that can rob you of the hope of someday being in him who is the ultimate in the infinite future, as once was in your past? Celebrate Christmas, dear, with this reverent feeling that he perhaps needs exactly this, your fear of life, in order to begin. Perhaps these very days of your transition are the times that he is touched by everything within you. Perhaps you are influencing him, just as you as a child with breathless effort left your mark on him. Be patient and without rancor, and believe that the least we can do is to make his evolving no more difficult than the earth does for spring when it wishes to come. Be glad and comforted. Yours, Rainer Maria Rilke. So this was letter number 6, and as I've told you, there are 10 letters in this book, and all of them contain such profound wisdom. I like these two ones because in the first one he introduces what he's talking about, and he talks about finding yourself, finding your own voice. And then in the sixth one he talks about seeking solitude, and in that solitude, in your work, seeking God. And if you think about it, those two are fundamentally the core spiritual ideas. Two very different though, but those are the two really powerful spiritual ideas. And they are the foundations of two kinds of religions. The Eastern religions, where you find yourself, you seek yourself, you go inside and you explore what is within you, what is this consciousness. This is the Eastern tradition. Whereas the Western tradition, or the Judeo-Christian or Islamic tradition, there you don't look inward, you look outward. But you don't look at the world. You go into solitude and you look at the God. You seek God. You seek the path of the God. And the way he talks about God, or the path towards seeking the God, it's so powerful, so moving. It inspires you. So that's what this book is about. It talks about writing, it talks about art. Of course, it inspires an artist, but I think it also inspires every human being. How we can live a life with all the magic that surrounds us. How we can make the best use of life. How we can create meaning out of it. It's really, really beautiful. So whether you want to be a poet or a writer or artist, it doesn't matter. If you want to become somebody else, if you don't want to become anything, if you are happy doing or not doing anything, I would still say you have to read this book. You have to read Rilke's letters, and you will find so much wisdom there. With that, I will take your leave, and I will catch you the next time with another book. Thank you very much for listening.